From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Our guest this afternoon is Jesmyn Ward. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank y'all for having me.
Like many of you, I first became aware of Jesmyn Ward's work when I read her remarkable novel, Salvage the Bones. Beginning in the days before Hurricane Katrina hit, Salvage the Bones tells the unforgettable story of a 14-year-old girl named Ash, the only daughter of 4 siblings in a poor Mississippi home. And that book went on to win the National Book Award in 2011. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And now Jesmyn Ward is back with a new novel, Sing, Unburied, Sing. And once again, we're traveling with a poor black family in Mississippi. But this is a more complex story, I think, with several narrators and a plot that moves back and forth in time and between the living and the dead. The story is built around a car trip that a woman takes with her children to pick up her husband who's just been released from prison. To begin, even though I've read dozens, maybe hundreds of stories in the news about the tragedy, Salvage the Bones is still the way I think about Katrina. And it's a novel I keep coming back to as I read about what's happening now in Houston. Is your family safe?
Yes, my family is safe. I mean, we got some fairly heavy rains from like the outer bands of the hurricane, but we're okay. Yeah, we're okay.
And what goes through your mind as you see this being repeated again?
I didn't think that it would affect me as strongly as it did. These days, I tend to get most of my news from Twitter because I think and I've said this before, I think it makes it's easier to bear the news when you feel like you're processing it with the community. And that's what I feel like when I'm on Twitter, reading the news. So anyhow, as I'm like reading the news reading Twitter and seeing tweets from people who are
trapped.
Yeah, who are trapped, who are sending out, who are tweeting for help and asking for people to send rescues to them. I thought, I kept retweeting those tweets and liking them and, trying to like amplify their voices, but I didn't realize that it would be that affecting and that it would feel that heavy. I mean, it was, it almost felt like it was happening again, right? That I was back, and here Katrina was bearing down on all of us and, and wreaking such like destruction. So it was difficult, and I'm surprised that I don't know that it was that difficult, but it was difficult. And I thought, well, maybe I should, maybe I should talk about this. Maybe I should actually write some original tweets, and I couldn't. Like I was speechless with horror, I think, and also sorrow, because here, people are suffering yet again.
You might have heard people I heard on the radio who had moved after Katrina, and now are going through the same thing with this new storm.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yes, and it has to feel like no time has passed at all for them, because I know, I'm living, back on the Gulf Coast. I work in New Orleans, and for us, it's been, 12, 13 years, and it feels like it was just yesterday. So for them, as they're like living through this new natural disaster, I mean, I can't imagine how that feels for them.
It's incredible, incredible. Your new novel is about a car trip, on some level. It's to and from a state prison, but it's a journey in a much larger sense too. I want you to talk about how you conceived of that story and the journey and the car trip as a vehicle, so to speak.
Yeah. So originally I thought, well, this will just be, the car the trip was like my excuse, to get this family on the road, to make them go somewhere, right?
To keep them contained.
Yeah, to keep them contained. And I thought, okay, it'll just be a road trip, and they'll go and they'll, pick the dad, Michael, pick him up, and then they'll come back home. And then I began reading about the history of Parchman Prison and reading about the history of, more about Mississippi history, because I knew absolutely nothing about Parchman Prison. And as I was reading more about like the history of Parchman Prison, I realized that this book wasn't just going to be about a road trip, and that it couldn't. Yeah,
yes.
and that in some respects, even as they are driving north, sort of into what has I think, what people understand as the heart of Mississippi. I felt like at the same time they're doing that, they're also, in some ways, journeying backwards into the past,
Yes.
right? And to really confront, you know, the history of the history of and the legacy of slavery, of Jim Crow, of mass incarceration. Like they're, you know, confronting all these things as they're moving, as they're, you know, on that road.
Because the novel is interspersed with memories of the grandfather's time in that same prison.
Yes, in the
when it
1940s.
was considerably worse.
Yes.
But just the 1940s. But as you describe it, it sounds more like the 1840s.
Yes.
You don't say it explicitly, but it does sound like a system of slavery.
Yes.
That
Yes.
was intentional.
Yes, that was
and
intentional.
historically accurate, I gather.
Yes, I mean, everything that I learned about Parchment seemed to indicate. I mean, the most important book to me during the process of writing this book is a book called Worse Than Slavery. And it is about Parchment Prison, and I think that the author is making the argument that, you know, that system was worse than slavery. I mean, it was basically, once people were sent there, I mean, they were tortured. They were worked to death. Yes. So.
And people profited off this.
Yes,
I guess someone,
people,
the
yes,
state or someone.
Well, they would rent the inmates. At one time, in the very beginning, I think, of the history of Parchment Prison, they'd actually rent out the inmates to, you know, these titans of industry in Mississippi, and they would do.
Like they were farm animals.
Yeah, they would do jobs, you know, for these titans, but then, you know, as I guess like later on, I guess in the 40s, that's when they decided to make Parchment Prison itself like a working farm or plantation, and that's what it was.
It's just horrific. I had no idea about this either. I mean, I knew conditions were bad, but that they were worked like this in a way that so obviously
Yes.
reproduced the conditions of 100 years earlier.
Yes, with trusty shooters, watching them with guns, making sure they don't run.
The dogs, everything.
Yes, the dogs, hunting them if they did run.
And killing them.
Yes, and killing them. If you killed someone who ran, and, you know, because these were inmates guarding other inmates with guns, right? So if one of the inmates with a gun killed someone who was trying to escape, they were able to go free. Like, that was their reward.
There was no investigation, no
No.
trial.
No.
Yeah. Now the father is this takes place in the current day. The father's in the prison is better.
Yes,
But
but
you suggest that it's still the legacy of that.
yes,
We still have a few million people in prison.
yes. Has anyone seen 13th, the documentary? I mean, you know, it's a wonderful documentary. Also, you know, it's amazing and also sad, and, you know, presents some very harsh truths. But in part, like, that documentary is about is about mass incarceration, about the fact that we're like, I think a couple of different people in that documentary said, you know, we're the jailingest nation on earth, right?
The jailingest
nation. Yeah, I mean, and I wish I had a better head for numbers, because some of the statistics that they put forth in 13th, you know, were just amazing to me and blew my mind. But I mean, I guess the population of Americans who are in prison today, like, we have more people in prison in the United States than the entire world has. Like, all the other countries in the world have in prison, right? We have more than that. Just
affects everything, of course.
Yeah.
Affects voting, for instance.
Yes.
Those
Because
people,
you can't
many
vote.
of them can never vote again.
Yep.
Not just when they're in prison, but ever again.
Exactly.
They're permanently disenfranchised.
Yep.
Let's talk about these ghosts, because your novel does play with time. It does move back and forth. As the family travels in the car, the story is interspersed with older stories that the grandfather's been telling the boy. And there are ghosts, not as metaphors in the novel, but as ghosts, which people are interacting with and seeing. That must have been a very conscious decision that you thought about. Can I get away with ghosts? Is this too gothic? But when we think about ghosts, we think about slavery, you come up against Toni Morrison's classic, Beloved. How did you negotiate that sort of anxiety of influence?
It might be foolish, but the only way that I can write new work, right? The only way that I can sort of complete a successful rough draft is if I forget about everything else,
Yes.
right? And so, of course, I was aware, of Beloved and of Toni Morrison, and feeling a certain amount of stress because, you know, Beloved is a masterpiece,
Yes.
right? How do you write about, you know, ghosts, you know, that, you know, black ghosts, you know, from these horrible moments in history without thinking about, you know, Toni Morrison's Beloved. But yeah, I did it by not thinking about it because that's the only way that I can.
Right.
It's the only way I can write. I just had to forget about, you know, I just had to put all of that out of my head and just say, okay, you need to write the best story that you possibly can, right? About JoJo, about Leone, and about Richie and Pop, right? Richie's one of the ghosts in the book. But
And what do the ghosts represent? Not to reduce these characters to representations, but why use ghosts instead of memories?
I am, you know, one of the like deciding factors for me when I was thinking about whether or not Given was a ghost, and whether or not, you know, Richie would come into the present moment was the fact that that young boys like Richie actually existed, right? And
In prison.
in prison.
He's 12.
In Parchman Prison. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, as I said, I did lots of research about Parchman Prison, and one of the things that I read was that, you know, young black boys, I mean, these are children, right? As young as 12 and 13, were charged with petty crimes, you know, something as silly as loitering, right? And then sent to Parchman Prison. And once I read that, and I thought about, you know, these little boys sent to live and die and work and die in a place like Parchman Prison, I felt like it would be doing an injustice to young men like that if this character, you know, this Richie, this boy, if he wasn't able to exist in the present moment and wasn't given the opportunity to speak. So at that moment, I was like, okay, the only way that he's gonna have the opportunity to speak in the present moment and to really interact with JoJo, you know, this 13-year-old black boy, you know, who is living now in the modern South, right? The only way that's gonna happen is if Richie is a ghost. You know, and so I felt like I really didn't have a choice, you know, as soon as I knew that a kid like him existed, I had to write about him.
It's tremendously effective and powerful and means so much when you think about how we are haunted by this past.
Yes. I mean, they're completely different characters, right? But you have, you know, Richie is a 13-year-old boy who lived in and was a victim of, you know, Parchman Prison and of, I think, the legacy of slavery, right, in Mississippi from the 1940s. And yet, and then here in this present moment in the book, you have JoJo, another 13-year-old young black boy who is wrestling with that same legacy, right?
What opportunities will he have?
Exactly.
Right. The book, it's not hopeful, but there are moments of hope.
Yes.
There's a suggestion of some sort of resolution. There's a suggestion that these ghosts can be not exorcised, but at least put to peace in some way.
Yep.
As you look across America, can I invite you to speak about what might, you know, bring some more element of peace to our incredibly fraught culture at the moment? I mean, when Obama was elected, a lot of people in this room were full of hope and optimism, which now seems painfully naive.
Yes. I think that part of what Richie needs, you know, part of what these ghosts may need is they need their stories to be told, right? They need the terror and the pain of what they lived through. They need that told, and they need that acknowledged, right? And I think that that's a beginning to finding our way towards hope, right? I think that we're in this very odd moment in history where there's a very sort of active, you know, group of people, you know, an element in our society who is totally against acknowledging this history. You know, they're against acknowledging, you know, that the Civil War was fought because of slavery. They're against
it was about states'
acknowledging,
rights.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, they're against like acknowledging that, you know, that black people have been devalued and dehumanized in this country for hundreds of years.
Yes.
And that history, you know, has real effects today, right? We
Yes.
live with that.
Yes.
And they're against acknowledging all of that. So I think that part of the way that we might hopefully, you know, find our way towards a more hopeful, a better moment is by at least like beginning by just acknowledging.
Telling these stories.
Yeah, telling these stories.
Aren't you, I mean, this sounds naive, but aren't you amazed how many stories have not been told?
Yes, I am.
I mean, I remember reading Beloved. It was a long time ago, but I learned about slavery in school. I just thought, you know, black people had to work really hard and they were enslaved. I had no idea it was a whole system of torture and rape.
Yes, yes. I just recently read a fantastic, life-changing book called The Half Has Never Been Told by, I think his name is Edward E. Baptist, I think. And it is amazing. And it's all about slavery and the making of American capitalism.
Yes. We don't acknowledge it.
We don't. And I had I'm 40 years old and I just read it for the first time. I had no idea.
And I didn't know about this prison. I remember Toni Morrison talking about when she began to write Beloved, she discovered all these ghastly tools that had just been written out of our history.
Yep. Yes.
Switching subjects a bit, you are a relatively new mother. I understand you have 2 children?
Yes.
One pretty young?
Yes, 10 months.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
The central character of your book is a mother, and she's a terrible mother. I mean, I know we hate to say that about anybody because it's hard to be a mother, but she's selfish,
Yes.
and she's mean,
Yes.
and she doesn't like her kids.
No.
I mean, we all don't like our kids sometimes, but I mean, this is different. She kind of enjoys, you know, making them uncomfortable.
Yes.
What was that like, to create a character like that, a young mother who was really bad at it?
Yeah, it was hard.
Yeah.
I feel like she was the hardest character for me to write.
I'm sure.
Because you know, normally in all of my fiction, I feel like I love all my characters.
The previous book.
Yeah,
those
of
characters.
course. I love them.
Tore
all of
everyone's
them.
heart out.
Yes, I love them. But she was difficult because at least when I was writing the very first chapter, which is told from JoJo's perspective, and JoJo, you know, there's much that he doesn't understand about his mother. You know, he sees the way that she abuses them and that she neglects them, but he doesn't understand why.
How could he?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's 13, right? And so when I was writing that first chapter, I was like, man, I really don't like her. and then I began writing her chapter, and I still did not like her much. And I realized that one of the reasons that I did not like her is because she was such an awful mother, and she was so horrible to her children. And as a, you know, new mom and, you know, as a mother, I just couldn't understand why she would treat her kids like that. And so it was then that I realized, okay, I have to figure out what's driving this woman to do this.
Yes. And
then, you know, as I sort of wrote more of that second chapter, and then I went to the third chapter, and I still didn't know, right? And so then when I came back around to her again in the fourth chapter, I made a decision, right, that the phantom that she was seeing would be, one, her brother that she lost, and that, two, that he would be an actual ghost, that he wouldn't be a hallucination, right, an effect of, you know, of her substance abuse. And that changed everything for me, because suddenly I understood her motivation. I understood, you know, the wound that she was living with, you know, and that made her sympathetic to me. That made me love her, because I felt so badly for her, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because it's the great pain of her life, and she can't figure out how to come to terms with her grief. She can't figure out how to move beyond it. And you know, and she's so selfish, and she's so wrapped up in herself and her pain that, you know, I think that like affects every relationship in her life.
Yes. I think confronting a question like that and being willing to stick with it and answer it is what makes the book so powerful and so emotionally complex. If she were just a villain, the book wouldn't really work.
No.
It'd be a story about a boy whose mother's a villain.
Yes, yes.
The book switches back and forth, chapter by chapter, for the most part, between her son and the mother. The boy is extremely sympathetic.
Yes.
Taking care of his 3-year-old
his baby
sister pretty much on his own, knowing that he can't let his mother do it because she might leave them or she might hurt them or who knows. Yeah, I had the same reaction reading the book, that I hated this woman, and then by the end she just seemed like a really tragic character in the most complex way. Yeah. She's an addict. She knows she's an addict.
Yes.
And when she acknowledges how awful she is, you just feel horrible for her.
Yeah.
What's that like to live with?
Because she knows. I think that, that part of her knows that she's an awful person, and she's an awful mother, and that she's doing lasting damage to her children by treating them the way that she does, but she just can't help herself. She can't, see beyond her own issues, see beyond her own pain, to be there for her children, to care for her children, to nurture them. She can't do it.
No,
it's
tough and very, very real. Yeah. As they're traveling, they meet this gentleman, this character who is part of a drug deal of some kind. He's extremely kind and just really evil, right?
Yes.
Don't you think he's just
He is.
unnerving how polite he is and how nice he is?
Yeah.
He's like the devil, Where'd that guy come from?
I had a lot of fun writing that guy. I don't know where he came from. He just, as I was writing this story, I think that it's funny because I'm continuously surprised when I'm writing.
By these people?
Yeah,
these
by
characters.
these people. Yeah, as I'm writing. I mean, I'm not the kind of writer who maps everything out from the very beginning. I don't plot. I don't do any of that. I start with characters. I have a vague idea of where they might be going.
Were you surprised they stopped at this house?
Yes, I was. I was like, oh, look at this. Who's this?
And he's so solicitous
he is.
getting them water, anything else you need.
Yep. Yeah, but he was just, it was interesting to spend some time with him in his house as he's, trying to feed them spaghetti and put them in mortal danger.
Yeah, it's a drug run, essentially. Everybody who writes about your work notes that you have this strikingly poetic style.
Yeah, they haven't always noted that it's a good thing. In the past, they've been like, what do you have going on? I don't understand any of this. It's too much. So.
I think it's beautiful and very poetic. And so I'm curious, have you written poetry?
I wrote lots of bad poetry when I was in high school and also in college. And then, for a few years after. So into my early 20s, I wrote a lot of poetry, but I feel like I'm afraid that I'm not very good at it. I'm afraid I'm not a very good poet. I love poetry with everything in me. I love reading it. I love reading poetry. I feel like when I read poetry that I remember how amazing language can be.
Yes.
Like all of the things that language can do, and how the right word or the right image or the right sound of these words strung together, how that can make you feel this well of emotion, right? And so I love poetry. I'm afraid that I'm not a very good poet. If I could, I don't know. I mean, maybe if I live to be 60, then,
Which is like twice your age now, right?
No, I'm actually 40, so it's 20 more years.
Okay. Yeah. I hope you write poetry before then. So you haven't published any?
I haven't published any. I would love to publish poetry, but I'd be very nervous about, very anxious about how it would be received. But I always admire writers who write, in multiple, forms and write across several different genres. And I would love to.
You write nonfiction too, though.
I do. I write nonfiction. But I would love to write children's literature, and I would love to publish maybe just one book of poetry one day.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, who do you go to know if your work is any good?
Oh, so I have a group of friends, all writers. Some of them I met when I was in the MFA program at the University of Michigan and at Armbur. Some I met while I was a Stegner Fellow at Stanford, and once I sort of, write a rough draft and then revise it multiple times.
Yes.
And I get the manuscript to a point where I don't think I'll embarrass myself if I send it to my friends. Then I send it to my friends and I say, can you look at this, please? Go read it. Tell me what you think. What's working, what's not working. They do.
Honestly?
And it takes them a couple months.
Yes.
But they read it and they write a response and they send it back to me. And then I revise again multiple times based on their feedback.
Yes.
And only after I've done that do I then send it along to my editor, who is amazing and who I think really makes me a better writer.
That's great. You don't have trouble receiving harsh criticism?
Nope. I think I took so many writing workshops, when I was younger that I became accustomed to it, right? I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And because I understand, nothing is at least for me, I mean, there might be some, magical writer out there who put something down on the page and it's perfect.
Yes.
I am not that writer. I know that when I put something on the page, that there's plenty that is, that needs work, right? And so I feel like, my friends who are writers and also my editor, like they're doing me a favor because they're helping me to realize this vision that I had. They're making the book the best that it can be by giving me feedback.
That's a good attitude. It's pretty tough to have, though.
Yeah.
So what do you read that you like this year?
Okay. Let's see. I have a lot on my bedside table. So I actually read The Half Has Never Been Told this year.
Okay.
It was amazing. It took me a long time because it's so dense, but I did. I read that book. It's
Did you read George Saunders' book?
I haven't had the opportunity.
There are ghosts in
yet.
that book, too.
I heard that.
Some black ghosts in
Yeah,
this
I heard
prison,
that.
unnamed graves.
Really? See, I was very excited about the fact that he was coming out with something new, but I just haven't had the opportunity to read it yet.
Would you take questions from this audience?
Sure.
There, we've got 2 mics here. One there, one there. Just come up. It's very hard for us to see you with the lights on, so wave your hands around. You wrote a memoir, The Men We Reap?
Yep, reaped. Mm-hmm.
Reaped?
Yep.
Incredibly powerful book about 5 men in your life who died.
Mm-hmm.
It's a strange it's a strange conceit, and it says so much about the tragedy of what's going on in America. Talk about how that book was conceived.
I think that in one way or another, I have been writing about my brother ever since I began seriously trying to write, right?
He was killed.
So yes, he was killed. He was hit by a drunk driver. And I was writing about him, even when he was alive, I feel like I was writing about him in one way or another. And so once I, lived through those, 4 or 5 years when my brother died and my cousin died and my 3 friends died, I knew that one day I'd write about that experience, but I didn't exactly know what form it would take. Because I could have fictionalized it,
yes.
right? But then I thought about it and I realized no one would believe it. They wouldn't be able to suspend their disbelief because they'd be like, this doesn't happen. There's no way,
right.
that there's no way that there will be this like a rash of deaths in this really small town.
It's an irony that we won't accept certain things as fiction.
Yes, and so I knew, okay, well, if it's creative nonfiction, then they have to accept it because they know that it's the truth, right? That I'm telling the truth.
Right.
And so I began working on that project. I mean, I just felt like that was a story that I had to tell. I had to write about my brother's life. I had to write about my friend's life. I had to write about all their deaths because I felt like people didn't know, and I felt like they should know.
And implicit in that book is that this is not so uncommon.
Exactly. Yes.
Which is
yes, and it is heartbreaking when I travel and I meet so many different people, and so many people have read the book and they come up to me and they say, I felt like you were writing my life. I lost this person, I lost that person. I mean, and it's it's heartbreaking to know that that so many other people have lived and are living through the same thing.
It is. It's an incredibly powerful book. Yes, ma'am.
I Actually, she was first. I'll let her go.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, I was going to mention that book, The Men We Reaped, and I wanted to say I'm so sorry for your loss and for your family. That the book touched me in ways that I can't really relate to, but it just was very powerful.
Thank you.
And I also, what you said earlier today was that these stories need to be told when you're talking about your other book, but I think that that's so true with the stories you told in Men We Reaped. And so I just wanted to thank you for telling those stories and bringing that out so that we could hear about that. I think that is one way that we can come together as a nation, and that was really important, and I'm sure it was incredibly hard for you to do that, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Hi.
Hi.
I'm from Hancock County, Mississippi. I'm from Bay St. Louis. So I really wanted to come see you today. And I've been living here for a really long time, so I often feel like I'm an ambassador for our state. And I wanted to chat with you a little bit about this because I have kind of like a maternalistic like defensiveness of Mississippi, where I can criticize Mississippi, but y'all can't. And so I was just wondering, you tell a lot of very raw stories about, where Mississippi is the setting, but you've also had the opportunity to go to places like Stanford and interact with people who've probably never been there. And how do you balance, telling stories that are, representative of this place without, I don't know, letting people read too much into it? Yeah.
That's a good question. I mean, I think the way that I balance that is by creating characters who are complicated, who have dimension, who are alive, who are not just like one thing. You know what I'm saying? Like no one's at least my hope is that no one is a villain. No one character is a villain in my work, and that all these people that I write about, they lead very complicated lives, and they're just human beings in the end trying to do the best that they can, right, with the circumstances that they've been given. And so I hope that by making them as human as I possibly can, that it'll be harder, for people when they read my work to just sort of, dismiss the kind of people that I write about, or dismiss the place that dismiss the place that I write about. Because, I mean, sometimes I too feel like an ambassador for Mississippi, especially whenever Hurricane Katrina comes up in conversation, because I know that sometimes people can have like very dismissive ideas about, the people that stayed, the people that remain when they know a hurricane is going to hit, the people that are struggling to survive after a natural disaster like that, comes to Mississippi, comes to the South. And so I try to humanize my characters the best that I can, so that people aren't able to sort of, aren't able to say, oh, they're just backwards, they're just dumb, they don't make good decisions. No, I want to, complicate them so that you can't dismiss them like that, and so that, you're able to see, to say like Jojo, this is just a kid trying to figure out what it is to grow up and what it is to be an adult in this country, right? So that you can look at Leonie's character and say, oh no, this is a woman who is, struggling with the loss of a loved one, and who, is not healing, right, from that loss. So that's the way I think I try to balance, I guess, the representation of the place that I'm writing about. Thanks. You're welcome.
Yes, sir.
My name is James. Hello. I have a question about your book that just came out that you're talking about, and I would like to know, have you intentionally wrote any characters that are connected with the characters from Salvage the Bones in regards of stream of consciousness? Last time I read that book was my last year at Morehouse.
That's a good question. I don't know if I will try to answer it as well as I can. I think in some respects that, Salvage the Bones was written from Esh's perspective, right? So from the perspective of this, sort of teenage girl, and so she's speaking the entire time, right? She has agency. She's determining the narrative. She's determining this. She's telling the story, and so I think some of that carried over in Sing, because here I am, allowing a 13-year-old, black boy to tell his story as he understands it, and then allowing his, and then his mother is able to do so at the same time, and then there's another narrator, right? One of the ghosts speaks here, and I, it's funny because I feel like writing from the first person perspective is, I like it. It's easier for me than writing, say, from a third person perspective. Definitely easier for me than writing from like a second person perspective. And so there's something that seems natural about about these people and about them sort of inhabiting my headspace and speaking to me, and then, and then I'm just sort of just like translating and letting their words, come to the page.
But how do you get inside people that are so different than yours?
For myself,
You didn't have a childhood like any of these people.
No, I didn't. I don't know. I don't know if I can answer.
You need to find out.
I don't know. It's honestly, often it feels like this person is sitting right here. So they're like right outside of my line of vision, right? And they are telling me, right, what to. They're speaking to me. They're saying these things, and I'm just sort of sitting there typing away.
I don't believe that at
sort
all.
Of like imagining.
No. The things you write are too artistic, are too formed, are too beautiful, are works of art. They're not, no one's dictating that to you.
It feels that way. I think in the moment of creation, and I'm specifically talking about writing, when I write the rough draft,
okay.
It feels very intuitive, like I'm not thinking about, how well I'm developing my characters, or whether there's too much narration and too little scene in this section, or how my dialogue is working. I don't think about any of that when I'm working on the first rough draft of a work. I just let it come. Now I do revise a lot, but I only revise once I've completed an entire rough draft. Then I go back and I revise again and again and again and again. And then I think about all those things. I think about character development. I think about plot. I think about, balancing narration and scene. I think about dialogue. I think about all those things when I'm going, when I revise, and I do edit after edit after edit after edit. And I actually enjoy revision, even though it probably doesn't seem like I do as I'm saying that. But I do. I enjoy revision. I enjoy the fact that I have something to work with. And so I think about those things when I'm going back in, but not in that first moment. I don't.
You just feel possessed. Did you want to follow up, sir?
Thank you.
Oh,
Okay.
thank you.
I saw an interview with Alice Walker once, and she said that all of her characters come to her and tell her who they are, and then she types them out, so you're not alone. I wanted to say this to you. I absolutely love Salvage the Bones. I cannot tell you how much. My book club loved it, and we would do anything to get you to do a sequel to that. But in addition to that, I wanted to say that on the behalf of every woman in the world who's ever been wronged by a man that she loved, thank you for letting Cash kick this guy's butt. I mean, thank you. And we need that sequel.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
So my family too is from Hancock County, though I am not. And while Katrina devastated my family's life, I think in your novel, it opened me up to a perspective that I would, as a white woman, not naturally see. And I'm reminded of that as my family is currently in Houston and going through the destruction of their lives and property there. But I think you've helped me reflect on my battles are different than other people's battles. So I want to appreciate that in your fiction and nonfiction. But my question is, do you feel like when you're reading fiction, you learn more about kind of humanity and the past and things like that, or do you feel like you do more so through nonfiction?
That's a good question. I don't know if I can quantify it. You know, I feel like I really think that everything that I read teaches me something. You know, and that, you know, say when I need to, you know, to immerse myself in a story, you know, in a fictional story, and you know, go along with this experience that doesn't mirror mine, then I go to fiction. If I want more, you know, or sometimes I can do that in memoir too, right? Or if I want to learn more than I know now, then I'll go to creative nonfiction for that. So I don't know. I feel like everything teaches me something. Every book gives me, if I read it, you know, all the way through, that it gives me. The reason that I'm reading it is because it's giving me something that I need, and so I don't. It's really hard for me to compare the two genres because they give me so much. Yeah, I don't know if I probably didn't answer that so well.
I agree. It's such a pleasure to have you today. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all for coming.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.